Today is Friday, August 22nd, 2014, and we are interviewing Karp at the Brooklyn Public Library, Kingsway. My name is Sharon Palmer, Neighborhood Library Supervisor, and I'll be the interviewer. We're recording this conversation for the Brooklyn Public Library, Our Streets, Our Stories. Karen, thank you very much for talking with me today. So can you tell me about where you grew up?
I grew up 92 Day Hill Road in Brooklyn. I don't know if that's the start of Borough Park or not. I went to PS 121, and later I went to Sethlow Junior High and FDR. In fact, I was the first class to be in I would have been the first graduating class, but we moved to Staten Island.
Can you tell me who were your parents and what were their occupations?
My parents were Edna Kramer and Ralph Kramer. My mother used to be a bookkeeper, but after she married, she became a housewife, and I think that was pretty typical of women in those days. And my father was a dentist.
Were your parents immigrants?
No. My grandparents were immigrants, though.
Which country did they come from?
My father's parents came from Russia, and my mother's parents came from Poland. We lived in my mother's parents' home for my childhood until we moved to Staten Island.
Did any of your grandparents talk about what life was like adjusting in America?
No, they didn't.
Did you have any siblings? And if so, what were their names and their genders?
Okay. My younger brother is Keith. He's 2.5 years younger than I am. That's my only sibling.
Now, you mentioned that you were born in the Borough Park area of Brooklyn. Can you talk about what role the library played in your life growing up?
Oh, I used to go to the library a lot. I was very much into books. I have always been a very avid reader. And they didn't have that many programs there then. It was basically very straightforward. If you read a book, you could take it out. But I know now it's been changed. They have all programs for toddlers and all types of CDs. Some have music, videos, but there was nothing like that growing up. Just regular books.
Well, you mentioned you went to PS 121 and Sethlow Junior High School. Can you recall any of your teachers, and if so, what were they like?
Yes, I can recall all of them. Well, not in Sethlow, but in elementary school. Mrs. Wolf was my kindergarten teacher. I had Miss Miles for first and second grade. I had Miss Sussman for third grade. She was, I would say, the teacher who influenced me quite a bit. She encouraged me a lot. In fact, one of the few extracurricular activities in elementary school was the Glee Club. And
what club?
Glee Club, singing. Mm-hmm. And, she tried out, and I tried out for that, but I guess I was nervous because I didn't do a good job and they weren't going to accept me. But she played the piano. And she said, look, she's in my class and she can do better than this. And the next time I sang, and I did very well. I got in the Glee Club, and I stayed there for until I graduated. And then you graduated at 6th grade. My fourth grade teacher was Mrs. Haskell, and she was a good teacher too. She had a lot of stories about her childhood. And my fifth and sixth grade teacher was Mrs. Samber. And I developed some kind of a reading problem then, so we weren't I didn't get along with her that well. But
Was there any teacher that stands out at Setlo when you were in high school?
no, not really.
What was your favorite subject in high
English.
school? English.
English, always English.
And at FDR?
Also
English.
Yes.
Can you talk about the people in the neighborhood you grew up in? Because you mentioned that you grew up in Borough Park. So what was the community like and the people?
It was kind of mixed, Jewish and Italian, but not very religious as it would become. And I don't know. There was no trouble that I know of. But I was kind of quiet and bookish as a child. So.
Can you describe what was the community like? Was it a question where you knew your neighbors, you knew your
Yes.
friends, people were very caring? Can you elaborate more on what life was like in Borough Park?
No, it was good. I mean, we were friendly with our neighbors. Kids used to play all the time in the street. Well, a favorite game everybody had was stoop ball. You never see that now. But you'd throw the ball against your stoop, and 10 points if you caught it on a fly, and 5 points if it bounced once when you got it. We played a lot of punch ball in the alleyways and in the schoolyard. There was one dead-end street that we also played punch ball, freeze tag. We call it giant steps. Maybe some people call it Mother May I. There was a leader, and she said, you take one giant step, one baby step, one umbrella step. And if you did it right, then you went ahead. And if you did it wrong, you went back to the beginning. And you kept doing that until you got to the leader. Then you became the leader.
Was there anything else that you did?
We played hide and seek.
Did you play any sports like baseball or tennis?
There wasn't not too many organized sports. There wasn't that. We went to Coney Island to swim. Wasn't that many pools.
So at Coney Island, did you swim in the ocean, or
Yes.
was there a pool? Okay.
No, there was the ocean. Brighton Beach also. I like to swim. Now, of course, I swim in pools, but then I really loved the idea of the ocean. I collected all kinds of shells, and sometimes made sand castles.
Can you describe what was Coney Island like at that time?
A lot of rides, and a lot more people came there. They had a place called Freedom Land, where it was like there was a steeplechase. You get on a toy horse, and you'd ride all around the place. They had all different haunted houses, and I was a little bit of a daredevil then. So I liked to go on the rides like the Wild Mouse, the Tornado. I never quite made it to the Cyclone, but all those really fast rides. You go up, you go down. I enjoyed that. And there was a place where they had trampolines, and I like that. And I like that also. They had freak shows there. I don't know if they still do. I never went though. I was curious, but my parents thought it was a waste. And they didn't.
What kind of shows is this?
Freak shows,
Freak shows,
like
okay.
Bearded Lady. I remember one of them. They said. There was a 5-year-old mother, and I was very curious about how that could happen. And my father was saying, "Look, it's probably a 5-year-old dog or another animal." So.
Okay. Was there anything else that you and your friends did for fun? Did you do like skateboard?
I don't remember any skateboards at that time, but we did go on skates. We did have skates. And we rode bikes. We always tried to do a lot of tricks on the bikes. Neighborhoods were safer. I mean, you went all around. You could go in the street. It wasn't as built up as it is now. Let's see. Okay, a lot of different ball games. One of them I think was Hit the Penny. Your friend sat on one side, you sat on the other, and a penny in the middle, you tried to hit it. And after a certain amount of time, you won the penny.
Did you enjoy going to the movies with your friends?
Yes. Most of the time I went with my parents, but...
Do you remember what the price was at that time?
50 cents for
50
children,
cents
yes.
When you were a little girl.
Yes.
Can you tell me, how did your experiences growing up in the neighborhood, because you mentioned that you grew up in the Borough Park area, affect your life? How did you think that it influenced you growing up in Borough Park to now?
It was, it's hard to answer. I don't know. I guess I always felt fairly safe going around there. Maybe it's a little bit more. I am a little more optimistic and trusting than if I grew up someplace else. Then you could. When I was 12, I was allowed to go on the side of the beach and everything.
You went by yourself or with friends?
I went with friends.
Okay.
But, you wouldn't see that too much today. And by myself, I went to, different houses, collecting money for different charities. I think the Sea Cadets it was called. And of course you did that on Halloween, but also you weren't really afraid to go to different places.
Now, you live now in the Sheepshead Bay area.
Yes.
When did you move to this area?
I was an adult then. That would be 33 years ago.
Now, how has it changed from then to now, if you were to look back at Sheepshead Bay 33 years ago? Were some of the stores that we know right now, are they still in existence, or were there others that were around that were some of your favorites?
Well, a lot Stop and Shop is a relatively new store. They had supermarkets, but they were much smaller. They have Payless. I don't think they were around that long. Which I don't go to that often, basically because I don't, I'm very picky about my shoes. The aquarium they've had for a long time. I think a lot more fruit and vegetable stores.
So that leads me into my next question. Can you talk about how the neighborhood has changed for better and for the worse? So we can start with better. Do you think the neighborhood has changed for the better?
That's funny. I don't know if it really changed for the better or for the worse. There are more Asian people than there were before. And guess I had just a little bit of a little difference there, but I don't know if it's, it's still a nice neighborhood. And
So would you say that the neighborhood has grown more diverse now
yes,
than
definitely.
years ago?
Definitely.
So in your opinion, it's not a question of whether it's better or worse, but it has just changed or
Yes.
evolved differently.
Yes.
What do you say makes Brooklyn special? Because you've been born in Brooklyn, lived in Brooklyn, but at one point you lived in Staten Island as well?
Yes, I've been a few places. One time upstate, and 1 year in New Jersey. I guess Brooklyn is, I think it's very nice. One thing, you don't need a car to get around here. Public transportation will take you everywhere. And it's got a nice mix of stores and places where people can meet.
Well, this leads me to my next question, some of which you have answered. What are some of the things about this neighborhood that makes it a great place to live? Because you mentioned the stores and the transportation, easy access. Is there anything else you think about this neighborhood that makes it, a really great place to live?
I guess there's a lot of different programs around, a lot of different places. I think a favorite place would be Prospect Park. That actually has changed quite a bit, although some of it I didn't realize. I used to always go to the zoo as a child, but it was a tremendous zoo. They had elephants and...
Which zoo is this? Is this the
Prospect Park
Zoo?
Yes.
There were elephants?
Yes. Different kinds of bears. It was a lot bigger. Then they changed it, and they cut it down, which I'm kind of sorry about. But it's still kind of nice. I take my grandchildren there. I didn't realize they had the Autobahn house. I've liked that a lot because I like birds.
This is at Prospect Park.
Yes. I didn't realize that my parents just didn't know about it. But, that's a really nice place to go to do some bird watching. And I guess the birds were always there. I just didn't recognize it. And the Levitt's house. It's a funny thing. I took my kids there. And then I took my grandchildren there. And the carousel's been in existence for, at least since I was a child. I remember I used to love to go on that.
Now, you mentioned that you moved to the Sheepshead Bay area about 33 years ago.
Yes.
What was the reason for the move to Sheepshead Bay?
I'm married, and we lived with my husband's family for a couple of years. Then we got our own house. But he wanted to stay in the area. His parents were there. Also, the subway could take him right to work. I always went with the car to work.
Is there any message that you would like to leave for future generations who will hear this interview? About growing up in Brooklyn, what life was like, or, how people were towards each other, anything. How different was it, or if it was same to what you see now?
I guess it was better then. At least it was a little safer, but not as diverse and not as interesting. Like I said, there's a lot of programs, a lot of ways to meet, different places to go, different people to meet, and it's been basically the same. Not a radical change, but sort of a change, and. A lot of things I didn't realize as a child. They had a community theater.
Was this in Borough Park?
No, not in Borough Park. I know they have one now in the Narrows. I don't think it was in existence when I was a child. And all the colleges have shows, but I really I wasn't into that as a child, but as an adult, I always enjoyed that.
You mentioned that you lived in Staten Island.
Yes.
A little bit. What was it like in Staten Island?
Very different. That was pretty much like the woods, because when I moved there, they first got the Verrazano Bridge. And in fact, we were one of the first people to go on it, accidentally. We made a wrong turn, and there we were. But when I first got there, the streets weren't 100% paved. They got paved more when I moved in. They had Susan Wagner High School. That opened. I was the first graduating class with that. And I lived right across the street from there. There weren't that many stores, and you really had to walk a long way until I learned how to drive, and then I could go any place. But there is a train, but it doesn't connect too many places in Staten Island, or it didn't. They had buses, but it was a long wait. And it was a lot different from Brooklyn, because Brooklyn, there was always either a bus or a train or something, but not Staten Island. And we still had the woods in our backyard. One day, my mother came and she says, that there's a rabbit coming, eating up our lawn. Another time, a possum came. Didn't get any wilder than that, but, you wouldn't see that in Brooklyn.
I just have a quick question. At that time when you moved to Staten Island, you mentioned that the Verrazano Bridge had just opened. Did they collect tolls at that time on the bridge from the beginning, or did that come later?
I believe that they collected tolls.
So from the beginning?
Yes,
it was always
I
like
believe
that.
they did.
Is there anything that you feel that we haven't discussed, whether it's about your childhood or any experiences in Brooklyn that you think should be added to this interview? And if so, what would you like to discuss?
No, I think the only thing is I think the schools now are more tolerated, are more different kinds of students, and a lot more access to the handicap. I don't think I've ever. There was once a boy in my school who was mildly retarded, but otherwise we never saw handicapped people until I was in high school, and there must have been some around, but no, we haven't really had that.
Okay, so Karen, I want to thank you very much for taking time from your busy schedule to be interviewed today. Mm-hmm. And once again, this project is for our stories, our streets, and I want to thank you again.
You're very welcome.